I know I'm asking a lot. The price of freedom is high. It always has been. And it's a price I'm willing to pay.
When you're telling a story, whether it's science fiction, romantic, or a spy thriller, it's much easier for your audience to connect to the narrative through the eyes of a specific character. This character, the protagonist, can be someone that the audience relates to and cheers on throughout the events of the film. But what happens when the protagonist is a villain?
What the hell are you? We are Venom. On second thought, please.
The protagonist is the main character of a story who makes the key decisions that affect the plot and propel it forward. They enter the film with a goal, and by the end, we see if they've achieved it or not. Many protagonists aren't clear-cut so-called heroes and possess various good and bad qualities that play into their stories. Most protagonists can fit into three main categories: hero, anti-hero, and villain. The hero is someone who is admired or idealized for courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities.
This is the second time I've had to reclaim my property from you.
That belongs in a museum.
So do you.
The anti-hero is someone that lacks the idealistic or gallant qualities that a hero would have and often acts on their own version of morality.
I see the worst in people, Henry.
The villain is often the antagonist of the hero. Arguably, a villain can be described as an anti-hero with evil aims or intentions. There is an emerging trend of villains being protagonists, which means that the narrative revolves around them instead of a hero or an anti-hero. Some of the villains have a backstory to their actions or how they came to be, but most don't undergo any redemptive arc to change their behavior. In fact, the viewer simply glimpses a movie with the villain in their natural habitat. Some movies have gone so far as to have us sympathize with the villain and even admire them. Let's look at a few case studies of villains that range from least relatable to most sympathetic.
I need you to step out of the car, sir.
What is that for?
Would you hold still, please, sir?
Throughout the movie, we never learn about Anton's origin or background, which makes it difficult for the audience to connect to him. From his strange actions to his weird haircut, Anton doesn't match his environment and almost seems like a visiting alien. His motivations and morality are also difficult to understand, but he takes his unique moral code very seriously. In this scene, he makes a gas station attendant play his coin toss game.
Well, look, I need to know what I stand to win.
Everything.
How's that?
You stand to win everything, call it.
All right. Heads, then.
Well done.
Since the attendant won, Anton follows his code and allows him to live. At the end of the film, Anton visits the widow of Llewellyn Moss. Earlier in the film, Anton had made a promise to Llewellyn that if the money he had been tracking was not returned to him, he would kill his wife, Carla. When Llewellyn was gunned down by random bandits off-screen, Anton kept his promise, despite the fact that there was no one to hold him to it.
You got no cause to hurt me.
No. But I gave my word.
When she begs for her life, Anton takes out a coin and asks her to call it.
The coin don't have no say.
In his own way, he was giving her a chance to save her own life that still fit within the parameters of his particular set of morals. As he walks out of the house and cleans his shoes, we know that he killed Carla. Either she lost the coin toss or she refused to call the coin and he had to go back to his initial promise that he made to her husband. Either way, Carla ended up dead despite the fact that Anton receives no reward for her death. Anton represents the idea of random acts of evil. He has no character arc and commits indiscriminate forces of destruction.
Persistent. Now, I'm not fooling myself, sir. Having been raised with the self-esteem movement so popular in schools...
When we first encounter Bloom, he steals some fences, punches and robs a security guard, and then attempts to sell these items to a construction site. We don't know what kind of person he is until he stops to witness a flaming car collision. His small smile is the first indication we get that something is not quite right with him. At first, we can admire his hustle and his drive to achieve the American dream, which seems to always revolve around money. He even manages to fake his way into getting a real intern to help him for free. We begin to understand that Bloom's motivation is his desire to attain money and power, which he achieves through lies. However, we slowly piece together that morally and mentally, he is not all there. The first time Bloom crosses the line is when he arrives at an accident and moves the body of the dead man in order to get a better shot. The only time he really shows any emotion is when he loses to a fellow nightcrawler named Joe. Being a nightcrawler is basically filming a real-life documentary. The question often asked, is it ethical to intervene and thereby change events if the subject is in danger? He films the faces of the robbers and their license plate before going inside the house and filming the dead bodies. Of course he's breaking and entering, but he sells his footage as if he had arrived to help and happened upon this scene. Before he turns over the footage to his boss, he takes out the small gasping breaths of the man on the floor who he could have helped save. He never gives the footage with the license plates and faces to the police. Instead, he waits until he has the opportune moment to film the cops arresting the robbers. This happens when the robbers enter a restaurant and Bloom finally calls the cops on them. The shootout begins in the restaurant and ends up in a high-speed car chase. Bloom tricks his intern Rick into getting shot because he's afraid the intern will divulge his unsavory methods. Bloom gets interviewed by the police, but like most real-life villains, he gets away with everything he's done. In fact, he gets promoted and has a crew of interns and 3 vans at his disposal. The film emphasizes that these sharks are all around us and will do anything to attain power and money, and most often will get away with hurting people in order to get to the top. We don't empathize with Bloom. We fear him and his callous way of hurting others to get what he wants. Sadly, real night crawlers do exist, and some of them are as cruel as Bloom.
Ohio man arrested for filming fatal car wreck but not offering aid.
My father made him an offer he couldn't refuse.
Michael Corleone starts off as a hero. He's an Italian immigrant who commissioned to the Marine Corps and fights in both the Pacific and European battles during World War II. In the beginning of the film, he arrives at his sister Connie's wedding with his American girlfriend Kay. After he tells her how his family was able to get the popular singer Johnny Fontane to perform at the wedding, Kay seems horrified at the violence used and the mob implications, to which Michael quickly replies,
"That's my family, Kay. It's not me."
Michael was never meant to become the leader of the Corleone crime family. There were 2 major events that caused him to change his path drastically. First, Michael is roped into assassinating Sollozzo and Captain McCluskey because of their involvement on the attempt on the life of Vito Corleone, his father. The second event was when Sonny, the heir, is gunned down by the opposing mafia members.
Look how they massacred my boy.
After Vito Corleone suffers a heart attack and dies, the position of Don is left between Fredo and Michael. Fredo may be the older brother, but he has always been the weaker one, and as a result, Michael steps in to handle the family business. These beautifully shot parallel scenes juxtapose Michael becoming the godfather to Connie's baby with the hits he orders on all the opposing mafia members.
Michael Francis Rizzi, do you renounce Satan?
I do renounce him.
It is no coincidence that as he renounces the devil, he is ironically becoming one himself. It's clear that when it comes to his goals, Michael shows no remorse for his destructive actions, nor does he have any empathy for anyone who stands in his way. Many people love touting The Godfather as a film about family, and that's how this film was introduced to me. But let's be honest. This film is about greed and capitalism, and cloaked with words like family and loyalty, while attempting to masquerade as a rags-to-riches immigrant story. In The Godfather Part 2, Fredo betrays Michael by giving the opposition information in exchange for money.
Don't make a big thing about it. I know it was you, Fredo. You broke my heart.
After finding this out, Michael orders the death of his brother. One brother betrays the other for financial gain, and the other has him taken out. Not quite the warm and fuzzy Hallmark movie about family that people seem to describe The Godfather as. Michael summarizes his intentions the best by saying,
It's not personal, Sonny. It's strictly business.
the tragedy of this film and of Michael's character is that his transformation is gradual and at times shocking. In fact, Michael Corleone has often been labeled as a tragic hero. Sometimes life imitates art. Megan Gambino wrote an article for the Smithsonian with the title The Godfather Effect, which took a look at how The Godfather has affected society. Beyond the quotes and impressions is the interesting fact that real-life mobsters began emulating the actors on screen. In fact, Mario Puzo, the man who wrote the book that the film was based on, invented the term Godfather. Soon mobsters began using that term and even phrases like, "I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse." The Godfather has become iconic, and Al Pacino's performance as Michael Corleone is unparalleled. In fact, the American Film Institute recognizes Michael Corleone as the 11th most iconic villain of all time. Eric Stevens, known as Killmonger, has the origin story of many heroes. He grew up poor and lost his father at a young age. As a result, he was motivated to achieve greatness and did so by graduating from Annapolis Naval College and went on to become a Navy SEAL. At the heart of Black Panther is a conversation about globalization. T'Challa wants to keep the borders of his country, Wakanda, closed, while Killmonger wants to open them.
Must feel good. It's about 2 billion people all over the world that looks like us, but their lives are a lot harder. Wakanda has the tools to liberate them all.
Nakia, King T'Challa's girlfriend, and Killmonger have the same goal of opening Wakanda's borders and sharing their resources and knowledge with the rest of the world. But they differ in how they want those resources, specifically the vibranium weapons, to be used.
You know where I'm from. When black folks started revolutions, they never had the firepower or the resources to fight their oppressors. Where was Wakanda?
With Killmonger, we understand where he came from and why he believes what he does. We only need to look at the suffering in the world and see that he has a point. In fact, Killmonger was such a sympathetic villain that many audiences left the movie thinking he was right. Anton Chigurh represents the idea of random destruction, and seeing this idea in a character helps us to wrap our minds around it. Louis Bloom makes us look at the organizations and companies that promote people with dubious morals and question their ethics. Michael Corleone shows us that everyone is susceptible to the allure of power and fortune, but that the blind pursuit of these things can corrupt us. Eric Killmonger Stevens brings the suffering of the world to the forefront and reminds us that there are more things we could be doing. Being idealistic like most heroes only works on screen, but off screen it rarely changes the world. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to receive notifications.